Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy B, and today is a day of days. Some would say good, some would say bad. And we are going to be breaking down this recent announcement that has been confirmed. I was able to speak to SoD for a little bit, and I'm going to show you, just paraphrasing some quotes from his responses. I'm going to show you, we're going to read through the Home Kingdom chat, which is kind of funny. We're going to show you some screenshots from COD Discord and then talk about what this massive implication means for the community and for the game on if it ends up going down a hill where potentially Kingdom 60 and Echo even disband, even though it's only at the moment that SoD and Tempy are quitting. And we'll tell you when that's going to happen as well. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us a thanks. So at the moment, I can show you a piece here, which is that it has been confirmed that SoD and Tempy are quitting at the end of the season. Now, this was a part of what SoD was kind enough to reply with, confirming with me. I have asked him a few more, of course, follow-up questions, along with if there might be any interest in doing a exit interview. I know he's typically not someone who usually does those. However, given the magnitude of the situation, I hope there might be an opportunity to do that at some point, whether it's before or after the season ends, if he is all right doing that. Otherwise, if not, maybe someone else who's a part of management there in Echo might be willing or interested in having a conversation. Let's read through some of this Home Kingdom chat, because there is a lot to talk about, and I really want to share my thoughts on this, because I think that it has a lot more heavy implications than I think some people might realize. So this is their Home Kingdom chat in Kingdom 60. And someone asks initially, and I think this is not SoD, but someone else, says, guess correctly, and you could win a free trip to Evil Cat's infamous wasted holes. Why are SoD and Tempy quitting? And then who is SoD? What is a Tempy? ECH1's an RSS center. And then we get to some of these things where we have someone named Clown SoD, who's, again, probably just a brand new account that was made there. Echo is a yellow server now. Of course, NA, MFT, ESWB, BTX, NTS is more interesting to join there. Camel Ball says, and then we get EIS doing some work on propaganda against Cyber Legion. It's just funny how, like, the immediate assumption is that it's EIS, right? I mean, who knows at that point? This guy responds, you're like a chihuahua barking to look tough. Your profile picture also looks like a middle schooler from next door. I mean, damn, jeez. War General Boo makes an appearance. It's because the greatest R4 in all of CallofDragons left that sinking ship, and nobody in Echo leadership has a brain. This person says who? Oh my gosh. And then someone in Clown Sauce says, ladies and gentlemen, many alliances are open for recruitment. 30 NA, Rogue League Witters, MFD, BDIS, and Row. BTX, Rival 30 NA, WB, strongest Korean alliance, EIS, best alliance coordination, plus one of the ancient alliances that still survives. And then next person, it's popcorn. 25 IW, Crazy 2 plus top 1 Vietnam alliance. If you are still hanging on, Echo, good luck. EIS and best coordination can't be used together in the same sense. And one more good alliance, NTS Crazy Activity plus best ball. And then we get, maybe he means best coordination and taxing their own members for RSS. Jeez. Oh, is that it? Okay, yeah, that's it. So then we look at, right, there's obviously, again, I don't know if this is just because of, I imagine they're split because of maybe utilizing two different shells to fight, or they're prepping for when final zone opens. I don't necessarily know if there's anything more to that than this. But you have SoD and Tempy are kind of showing you here for kings, for diplomacy as well. And yeah, SoD's still there. Tempy, I think that's a farm. So let me see if his is over here, maybe. As our, oh no, I don't see it there. Okay, so it's probably somewhere else then in that case. Oh no, there we go. Right, so you can see the two accounts. Now let me show you some screens, or sorry, a little history, a little walk down history lane real quick. So Echo at the moment, which is to say that as of, and I think it is, let me skadoosh this over because I think I have this written down here at the bottom. Yeah. So Echo had kind of been supposedly like the #1 Kingdom Alliance from kind of around, and again, this is plus or minus, of course, but this is kind of suspected for when they started to rise and they really kind of started cracking into that top 4, top 3, which was around this date for end of last year. Going to about at the beginning of August, I would imagine, because once we got to the end of August, which is important to note, is that this is when the dynamics started shifting between where you can see, and I'll give you a really good example here, right? If we go, since we're on the master sheet, we go over to Kingdom Power, and we can see that as of around 8, once I find this date here, 2/16, 11/7, or is it for, oh no, hang on, I think it was for the alliances. I just had to go a little bit farther up. Once we get to about 8 for them, oh, excuse me, because on 8/30, I had my, that's where I was getting the date from, because the end of August was when the last KVK season took place, and we took the stats from them after registration had closed. And it had shown that Echo wasn't #1 Alliance going in anymore, right? It was EIS there at the top. And so kind of being able to have on this reign, if you will, even if they may not have been on paper, right, the strongest kingdom just based on flat numbers, I think it was pretty widely understood that they were the top fighting kingdom and they were sought after for matchups. People recognized them as being the strongest at that time, for however long you do consider that to be. Now let me go through some Discord posts that were made today. So this first one is here from Cookie saying, again, it's sad news that Echo is disbanding. We have Dawn saying, Echo disbanding feels like Black Friday sale to grab member. And to be fair, this is probably pretty accurate. I mean, we've covered a number of situations where either we knew that the kingdom was going to disband, we knew that the R5 was leaving, we knew that multiple members of leadership were leaving, and from all of these situations that played out, we saw really just that happen. It basically became a fire sale where you ended up having a lot of top players that moved off and eventually needed to go find new homes. Now, there has never been this big of a disband, and I should say potential disband, just like a potential fire sale in the history of the game so far. And I'm talking where an alliance was still considered to be the active #1 fighting kingdom, right? I don't think you look at Echo, and I don't think anyone would say that, okay, if Echo was going full strength in a 1v1, they could take on anyone. I think that's fair to say. You would probably give them the edge. Whether or not you say it's an absolute victory, I think at minimum you give them the edge in any fighting matchup, right? If it's a straight up 1v1. However, that's why I say to me it feels unique, because there hasn't been a situation like this where it feels like if they were to crumble because of this once near the end of the season comes, and obviously we'll of course get a very good idea on what happens. Because there's kind of two ways of looking at this. One is that SoD and Tempy quit and they leave, and it's just two players, and you have other people that step up, and then you maintain your top 3, top 4 status, and you just trim some weight, and you bring, if you need to, and then you bring new people in. And this way, you don't let the kingdom just absolutely fall apart when you have what appears to be at least a really good foundation. And that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that, well, Tempy and SoD are the only people maybe that want to step up, that were willing to step up in those particular roles to kind of truly lead. And like I said, I don't know the inner workings, but typically if they announce they're leaving and there's no one else that steps up, it either means that A, nobody wants to step up because they just don't want to do the job, or 2, no one is qualified or feels they're qualified to do the job. And regardless, it like that kind of sucks in a sense because you have such a prime kingdom, it feels like, that you can really do some good with. And you have all these big players, and it obviously would probably be hard in a sense to kind of like regather. I mean, at least, as quickly. That's the thing, is that if these players all disperse and they go elsewhere, they'll probably trickle going top down, right? So you're thinking EIS, WB, NTS, maybe TFS, maybe even I in 167, because when Tiny was over there with Jason and TFS, right, there's a chance that, he might have known some people there. And obviously anyone else that was maybe a part of TFS or even an Echo if they had left previously, right? I mean, so you can kind of think about having connections in all different places. But it most likely will probably be top down. And so, yeah, it's I'll just say it sucks, right? Like, obviously for me, I would love to see them stick together and be able to replace leadership and management and keep the thing going. Just because, like I said, to potentially do a rebuild, it would take multiple seasons to do something like that. And you just already have everyone here. So, you think about that and it just sucks. However, next one we have here is Vicky saying Echo isn't disbanding. They're just getting with the meta. Okay. I mean, to be fair, there have been quite a few of these situations that have played out, at least in 2025, and we've covered, I think, all of the major big ones. Vicky says here with Paradise Dark is celebrate all year. Echo disband and EIS crown the top kingdom. If Echo disbands, I'm pretty sure the other top kingdoms have to downsize by a lot. Yeah, I mean, this is a lot to unpack. So, number one, is Dark celebrating, and will he be going into the new year with a massive smile on his face, at least in this one aspect of his life? There is a very high probability that will happen. Number two, Echo disbands and EIS crown the top kingdom. I don't know if that's true. I would argue that they are in the hunt to be crowned the top kingdom. But I think that if you're looking to say like they're the top fighting kingdom, I think it's a little too soon to crown something like that. And I say that because once you're at the top, you need to also, one, defend your position. And that means that you also need to go against other top kingdoms, right? Remember, Echo had fought multiple seasons, I think at least 2, if not 3, to my knowledge, where they took, if not just played out, underdog matchups. And they fought their freaking souls out. And they still stayed together, only continuing to grow and to trim. And so in that case, they didn't necessarily let what technically would have been a KVK loss impact the fact that their kingdom, at least in some of the seasons, not all, of course, but in some, valued getting the most amount of PvP out of the season rather than only focusing on winning. And you could argue that I'm sure a number of their members probably would rather just win. And I think that can be said for every top kingdom. You would probably rather just win the season, regardless of how much PvP you're able to get. I think some people do believe that. And maybe the majority of people share that opinion. But I will say, and I have said this, I do think that there is a level of respect for any kingdom and alliance, whether that's Echo or another, that values getting as much fighting out of the season, regardless of if they win the season or not. And I think that deserves a level of respect and acknowledgement. But like I said, I think EIS, even though on power and on paper, they're the top kingdom, now it's a matter of proving that you can also be and or want to take that throne of being the top fighting kingdom, undisputedly, is very important. And then the third one for Paradise, if Echo disbands, I'm pretty sure the top kingdoms have to downsize by a lot. Now, that is interesting because it makes it almost seem as though now that Echo could potentially become a fire sale kingdom where recruiters from all over are going to be reaching out to as many people as possible, and I'm sure probably already have. Will they potentially hemorrhage players in their own kingdom? Will they trim even more than maybe they wanted to make room for Echo players? And then could that potentially upset some existing players within their kingdom? That is an interesting storyline. Next, we have a hater asks, why are all Echo tags from people gone? Echo disband. And then someone hits the emoji. My boy Panties Brook says, if Echo disbands, they will join WB. Okay. And then we have here, Double D says, Mubin will probably drop another 20K this season to not play and quit after. Bunny says, if Echo disbands, he joins BTX, I think, to be with his e-girl. To be with his e-girl? Which e-girl? Damn, man, I didn't know Mubin was balling like that. But to share some stats here, just to kind of show you guys now, as of last month, right? So we're talking a month ago now. And we're going to probably do an updated one on this in a couple days. So this week, we're going to kind of revisit the updated top 25, and we'll probably do some more things with that as well. But this is where it was about a month ago. So EIS was 1, WB 2, Echo. I think if you're looking at where do I think players will go if, again, a disband happens, to me, it's all top down for the most part. I think EIS might get some people. WB might get some. But this will probably be few, right? Because they're already closer to full status. And if they're not, or if they are, then obviously that makes it so you're only going to be able to get a couple people. And then you also have to consider, well, how much can you possibly trim from now until the next migration window, or at least end of season, we should say, before registration. And then you're looking at, okay, BTX probably might get some people. NTS, very good chance NTS could get some people. RAC, WAL. I mean, I think any of these kingdoms in the top 10, right, have a good shot. Maybe top 9, top 10, right? And I think you look at like some honorable mentions. I think MFG is in there. Who else do I have in here? IWTC, RFF, A2G, maybe even ROG as well, right? I mean, who knows? Depends on where the connections are, as usual. But I definitely think that you're going to be seeing kind of it going top down. So it'll be curious to me once we do the next pool, not the pool that I'm going to do this week, but the one after that, which will be us then prepping for all of our KVK prep that we're going to do going into the next season and seeing what changes. Because you could have some of these kingdoms that are a little bit lower that because of Echo disbanding, now there's more coming in, getting closer to 30 bill, right? And that's obviously a massive possibility. But the challenge then also becomes, well, are you just going to boost up some of the top kingdoms? And then in that case, what happens if the gap separates? Like a good example here. What happens if a number of Echo people leave, the kingdom does truly disband, and all of the players feed into NTS, BTX, WB, EIS, right? Now you're having more of a wider gap where you could potentially be pushing everyone else by, and again, that's probably somewhat unrealistic, right? Because of how big Echo is. There's a good chance that they would probably have to push deeper down, at least for the people that would be leaving, because I don't think there's any way you're going to be able to fit everyone in Echo into these 4 kingdoms unless they trimmed a bunch before next KVK registration finishes, maybe. But even if that happened, just think about what the gap would be. Right now you're talking about pushing all of them 30 plus, 32, 33 billion, right? And now it's like an 8 bill gap between 5 and 6. Just so we'll see, obviously, depending what happens. But the next things I'm going to show is some other pieces here that SoD had quoted to me as well, which is he mentioned removing Echo name from all shells. Now, I don't know if that means he's just going to like remove the name, like delete the name or put a different name in there. Does that mean maybe he's going to hold on to the shells? I don't know. So that's interesting because I feel like I needed a little bit more context there on that one. And I did ask him as well. And then something else he had mentioned is that if players were to stay in Kingdom 60, they will continue to be led. And then I thought to myself, well, okay, well, who are they going to be led by, right? Is it, again, will someone be able to step up and lead, meaning, like they'll be able to kind of take over those shells in that sense and then continue leading in that facet? Or, was there something else that he meant by that? So again, I had asked that as well. So, we'll see what ends up happening. And obviously, if there's an opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with SoD in any kind of a form of an exit interview before the end of the season or after the end of the season, of course, would love the opportunity to do so. I'd love to hear what you guys think on all of this. I think for me, like I said, I'll just be curious to see what happens and how the power dispersion affects other kingdoms on the list. But the challenge is that anytime these things happen, especially in top active KVKs or kingdoms, there's always going to be a number of people that quit. It's just inevitable. It just depends on how many. And because of that, it also just means, spending in those kingdoms will go down, depending on how much. And obviously, hopefully the majority of people will be able to find a new home if they're unable to continue in Kingdom 60. And so, I think for me, probably the most interesting piece, like I said, is how the power dynamic, if it changes at all, how will that play out amongst the top 10 kingdoms going into the top 25, right? Who's going to be able to benefit the most potentially from if a disbandment plays out, right? And where do people go? And at the same time, where do they not go? Right? That could be interesting. So yeah, man, you guys let me know in the comments. How are you feeling about this? Are you happy? Are you sad? Why or why not? Where do you think people are going to go? Let me know in the comments below. That's it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.